Down there, life continues. The traffic is awful, stocks go on trading, and Star Trek is still showing.
living, and under the topic body systems, right? Today's subtopic is going to be the circulatory system. So we've been talking much about what the reproductive system, and I hope you have learned and understood, right? So now it's time to enter the circulatory system. Without wasting time, let's look at our lesson objectives. Right. This is what we need to achieve by the end of this lesson, right? So please pay attention and get your notes book so that you're able to take down some notes as I am teaching, right? So now, at the end of this lesson, you should be able to define the circulatory system. Not only that, you should also be in a position where you are able to identify the parts and their functions in the circulatory system. Also, you need to be able to discuss the health issues that are affecting what? That are affecting the circulatory system. And also, you need to be able to list ways that we can use to prevent the health issues that are affecting the circulatory system. That's all for our lesson objectives, and this information is found at the CAPS document on page 59. Now let's move on. Right, looking at our pre-knowledge, right? Pre-knowledge, remember, it's foundation to today's topic, right? It's all the topics that we have covered before in the previous grades, and also the same grade probably that covers what? The foundation of today's topic. So in grade 5, we talked about animal skeletons, talking about the different types of skeletons. To mention some, we mentioned exoskeletons, endoskeletons, and hydroskeletons, right? In grade 5 also we talked about the life cycles. And also then in grade 7 we talked about the human reproduction, and in this grade we talked about the body systems, right? So that's all the topics that are covering our foundation for today's topic. Now, we also have a baseline activity that I would like for us to use and test our knowledge so far, right? So let's go through the questions together first. Number 1 is saying, what is the function of the respiratory system? Then number 2, you need to list the main components of the respiratory system. That's all that you need to do for this baseline activity. So I'm going to give you a quick 3 minutes to write down the answers. Then after that, we shall proceed. Number one was saying, what is the function of the respiratory system, right? So the function of the respiratory system is simply what? To be able to supply the body with oxygen and also to remove carbon dioxide from the body. So we say that the respiratory system is responsible for supplying oxygen to the body and for removing carbon dioxide from the body, right? Then you mark your work. Number two, list the main components of the respiratory system. And the main components of the respiratory system, they include the nose, right? The nose, the mouth, your trachea, other air passageways such as the bronchs and the bronchioles, right? The lungs, and also then the blood, right? So now, let me just give you 2 minutes quickly to copy down corrections. And remember, if you need to send in your answers, your questions, or any comments regarding this lesson, our WhatsApp number is 079 right? So let's meet again after 2 minutes. Welcome back, grade 9s. Now let's move on with our lesson, right? So now we are done with our baseline activity. Let's explore the important terms that are associated with this lesson, right? The first one there is arteries, right? Arteries, what are arteries, right? Arteries are blood vessels transporting blood away from the heart, right? So we have a key word here, right? Transporting blood away from the heart. And that is the function of the arteries, right? They are responsible for transporting blood away from the heart, right? So let's not forget that these are blood vessels or channels that are the channels that blood flows through, right? So this one is responsible for transporting blood away from the heart. Now, capillaries. Capillaries, these ones are the smallest blood vessels in the circulatory system, right? Then we have veins. And veins now are blood vessels that transport blood towards the heart. So another keyword here is towards the what? The heart. So I'd like us to draw the difference between what? To draw the difference between arteries and veins. So arteries, they transport blood away from the heart, whereas veins, they transport blood towards the heart, right? That is the difference between the two. Then we have capillaries. Capillaries now are the smallest blood vessels in the circulatory system. They form a bridge, or they are a bridge between what? The arteries and the veins. And we shall talk more about them in the lesson. So let's move on. circulatory system, right? So now let's go back to our first lessons, right? We have cells. When we have cells, we have what? When you have a cell, which is a single building block of life, right? And when you have a group of cells, you start to have what? A tissue. When you have a group of tissues, you have what? An organ. A group of organs, you have now what? A system. So meaning what? Today we're going to talk about a group of organs that make up the circulatory system. Are we together? So that's where we are today. So the circulatory system. What is the main function of the circulatory system now? Remember, it's different organs working together for a specific function, right? So for this one, these organs, they are working together to simply bring in nutrients, right? To bring nutrients and oxygen to cells, right? And also it is responsible for removing waste products. That's all that the circulatory system is about. Are we together? All the parts or all the organs that make up the circulatory system, they are working towards this one goal, which is to bring nutrients and oxygen to cells and also to remove waste products from cells and out of our bodies, right? So what is the structure of the, before we get to the structure, we say that it is responsible for bringing in nutrients and oxygen to cells and as well as to remove waste products, right? It removes waste products from all body cells. And those waste products, we're talking about waste products such as carbon dioxide and ammonia, for example. All together. So this is the structure of the circulatory system. It is made up of simply the heart, right? The heart and the veins and arteries, right? And as well as capillaries. So we can safely say that it is made up of the heart and what? Blood vessels, right? And also the circulatory system, the interesting part about it is that it is interconnected with the respiratory system, right? Because when we breathe in now, what are we using? Our respiratory system. But when we breathe in, the oxygen travels into our trachea, into our lungs, and into our alveoli, right? And in the alveoli now, what happens? Diffusion takes place. Where now the oxygen is highly concentrated, it moves from those alveolus to the bloodstream, right? Into the blood capillaries, right? So that now the oxygen is circulating all over our bodies, right? So that's why I say that it is interconnected with the respiratory system. So if you look at this structure here, this is the heart, right? The heart is responsible for pumping blood throughout the whole body. And the heart now needs to receive what? Oxygen. Oxygen that we that we got from our respiratory system when we are breathing in and out, right? The oxygen now diffuses from our lungs into the networks of blood, which are blood capillaries. From there on into our heart again and to the rest of the body, where the oxygen will be used for other processes such as cellular respiration as well. Right? So the main components now of the circulatory system, they include the heart, the blood, right, and blood vessels as well. Those blood vessels are divided into three groups. Those are arteries, veins, and capillaries, right? So that is the main structure of the respiratory system. So before we continue again, let me remind you, right? Circulatory system, we're going to talk about the different parts that enable the body to bring in nutrients and oxygen to cells, right? And also to be able to remove waste products from the body, from the cells of the body, right? And the structure of the circulatory system, it includes the heart, the blood vessels, which are the arteries, veins, and capillaries, and also what? The blood. So let's move on now. So what are the main processes that take place during the circulatory system, right? So the circulatory system now, it is responsible for circulating blood between the heart and the lungs, right? So I want you to note that down. It is responsible for circulating blood between the heart and the lungs. Why the lungs, right? I just told you in the previous slide that the lungs, it's where now we receive our oxygen. From there on, the oxygen is going to diffuse, moving from what? From the alveolus into the blood capillaries. Are we together? So it is responsible for circulating blood between the heart and the lungs. And also, it is responsible for circulating blood between the heart and the rest of the body, right? Why? Because it's a circulatory system, right? It circulates blood all over our bodies. So when you look at this now, this is the heart, right? The heart, which is our main engine here, right? So we're saying that the circulatory system now is responsible for circulating blood between the heart and the lungs, right? So meaning now, blood moves from the heart and all the way to the lungs, right? When it gets to the lungs, that's where it receives what? High amounts of oxygen as we are breathing in, right? It receives what? High amounts of oxygen. So now, what happens? The oxygen diffuses from the lungs into the bloodstream, right? It diffuses from the lungs into the bloodstream. As it gets into the bloodstream now, the blood becomes highly oxygenated, meaning it is rich in oxygen, right? So we say what? We say that the blood is oxygenated. So now this blood moves from the lungs back into the heart, where it's going to be pumped again, right? Where it's pumped now, it moves from the heart and to the rest of the body, to our kidneys, to our toes, to our brain, and all over the body, right? Where now the oxygen is going to be used for other processes that include cellular respiration, and also it's going to remove waste products from that as a result, right? Because we know that the product of cellular respiration as well as is what? Is carbon dioxide. So meaning what? After cellular respiration has taken place as well, the blood now is going to move, and now the oxygen has been used up. The blood now, we say it is deoxygenated. It is lacking what? Oxygen. It moves from the rest of the body back into the heart, and from the heart back into the lungs again, and we breathe out what? Our carbon dioxide. Now, do we get the whole point of bringing nutrients, bringing oxygen, and also being able to remove waste products such as ammonia and carbon dioxide from our bodies, right? Now, so the human circulatory system, we say that it consists of the heart, right? And also the blood vessels. So the heart is responsible for pumping blood, whether it is to the lungs and whether it is to the rest of the body, right? It is responsible for pumping blood. And it also consists of what? The circulatory system. It consists of blood vessels, which are channels through which blood flows, right? And those blood vessels, they are what? Your arteries, your capillaries, and also the veins. So also it consists of blood, right? And blood is the substance which carries the materials that are being transported. What materials am I talking about here? I'm talking about oxygen, and I'm talking about the nutrients, right? Nutrients probably from the food that we have eaten, right? Our starch, our carbohydrates, our proteins, and so on, right? So now, let's talk about the heart firstly before we go further with our lesson, right? Remember, we're going to talk about these components one by one now. So the heart is located near the center of our chest, right? It is located near the center of our chest. And it is the hollow organ which is approximately the size of our clenched fist. Right? This is our fun fact here, right? Did we know that our heart is approximately the size of our clenched fist, right? So it is a hollow organ and located near the center of our chest, right? And it's it's on the side of what? Of the left-hand side of our sternum, which is the breastbone. So the heart consists of 4 chambers. These chambers are divided into 2, right? They consist of 4 chambers. It consists of atriums and ventricles. So now you have 2 upper chambers of the heart called the atriums, right? And the atriums are responsible for receiving blood. Whereas the ventricles now are the lower chambers of the heart. They are responsible for pumping the blood out of the heart altogether. So the atriums, there are 2 on either side, right? Yes, they are our upper chambers, but there are 2 on either side. Meaning we have what? The right atrium and also the left atrium. And also now the ventricles, there are 2 on either side. We have the right ventricle and also the left ventricle, right? So as we said that atriums, as the upper chambers of the heart, they are responsible for receiving blood that comes from the rest of the body, and the ventricles are responsible for pumping blood towards the rest of the body. Are we together? So looking at the structure of the heart as well. The heart has different parts that enable it to function well, right? So it has parts such as the superior vena cava, right? It has pulmonary valve, right? The valves, all the valves, they open and close at a certain time so that there's what? Consistency of blood flow, and they control how the blood should flow or where should the blood flow to in the heart, right? So we have parts such as the superior vena cava, the pulmonary valve, the right atrium that I've just mentioned now, the right ventricle just below the right atrium, right? So when you look at our heart here, it is divided into two as well, right? The upper chambers known as the atriums and the lower chambers as the ventricles, right? So we have the right atrium, the right ventricle, then the inferior vena cava, right? We also have what? The descending aorta. We have the septum, which is the part where the heart separates into two, right? We have the septum, we have the left ventricle, we have the left atrium, the pulmonary vein, the pulmonary artery, and also the aorta. Are we together? So now let's move on. Cardiac circulation. What do we mean by cardiac circulation, right? So it means what? We're circulating blood, right? And the engine or the main engine is the heart, right? Which is enabling what? The circulation of blood by receiving blood and also pumping blood out of it. So the heart functions as two separate pumps. Are we together? It functions as two separate pumps. And those pumps are controlled by two sides of the heart, right? The right-hand side of the heart, it pumps blood from the heart to the lungs, right? It pumps blood from the heart to the lungs. Why the lungs? Let me remind you again, to receive what? Oxygen, and to make the blood to be highly oxygenated, right? And we call that what? Pulmonary circulation. We call that pulmonary circulation when the heart pumps blood to the lungs. And in the lungs, as I said, in the lungs, the carbon dioxide leaves the blood and oxygen is absorbed or it diffuses from the lungs into our bloodstream. Then the left-hand side. The left-hand side is responsible for pumping blood from the heart and to the rest of the body, right? From the heart to the rest of the body. And that one we know it as what? Systemic circulation. So we can safely say that we have two types of circulation, right? Pulmonary circulation and systemic circulation, right? And pulmonary circulation is when now the heart pumps blood to the lungs. Whereas systemic circulation is when the heart pumps blood from the heart itself to the rest of the body, right? Wherever the blood is needed, whether it's our brains, whether it's our toes, whether it's our kidneys, and so on. Are we together? So we say that it is systemic what? Circulation. Right. Now here is another clear picture of a structure of the heart, right? As you can see, where these parts such as the superior vena cava, the aorta, which is the main artery, the pulmonary arteries, pulmonary veins, the two atriums left and right, and also we have what? The two ventricles left and right, and we have the septum here and our inferior vena cava. Right. Now, we said that the circulatory system is made up of the heart, the blood vessels, and blood, right? So now we are done talking about the heart, and let's move on to blood vessels. So there are three types of blood vessels. We have arteries, veins, and capillaries, right? So now, let's look at this structure here, right? We said that the arteries, they carry blood away from the heart, whereas the veins carry blood towards the heart, right? And I said to you that the capillaries, they are a bridge between what? The arteries and the veins. They are smallest blood networks, right? So now, when you look at the arteries here, right? as they branch from the heart and towards the rest of the body, when they reach other organs of the body, they start becoming smaller, right? They start becoming smaller and narrow, right? So we say that from there on, they are arterioles, right? Those arterioles now, they connect also with the veins, right? Or the venules of the veins, right? And they form a network of blood called capillaries, right? Our smallest networks of blood. So then, therefore, after that, from venules, from moving from that organ towards the heart again, they start stretching again, and we know them as veins, right? So the three types of blood vessels are arteries, the veins, and the capillaries. So let's talk about them one by one now. Starting off with the arteries, right? So arteries, we say that they carry blood away from the heart, right? So it moves blood away from the heart towards the rest of the body. And this one is for what? It's except for the pulmonary arteries, right? Pulmonary arteries are responsible for transporting blood towards the lungs. So all arteries carry oxygen-rich blood, meaning what? They carry blood that is rich in oxygen or oxygenated blood. And also arteries have thick walls. They have thick walls that help them withstand pressure produced when the heart contracts and pushes blood. And the artery walls contain connective tissue, smooth muscle, and also endothelium. So this is the structure of an artery, right? As you can see here, it is having what? Thick layers, and also to provide thick walls to withstand high pressures, right? To withstand high pressures that are produced when the heart contracts and pushes blood. Right. Now moving on to veins. We said that veins now, they carry blood towards the heart, right? They carry blood towards the heart, unlike what? Arteries carrying blood away from the heart. So now these ones, they carry oxygen-poor blood or deoxygenated blood. What do we mean by deoxygenated blood? So remember now, once the blood reaches other organs in our bodies, the oxygen that is in the blood is used up for processes, right? Such as cellular respiration in our cells and so on, right? So that we are able to produce energy, right? So after that, you produce what? A byproduct, which is carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide now leaves with the blood from those certain organs back into the heart, right? So the carbon dioxide now, we say that the blood that carries more carbon dioxide is deoxygenated, right? So it is oxygen poor, and veins are the ones that carry this deoxygenated blood back into the heart, and so thereon we are able to excrete these waste products. So the walls of these veins, they contain connective tissue and smooth muscle, right? And also the veins have some valves, right? The veins have valves that help them to keep blood moving towards the heart. So many veins located near skeletal muscles, contractions help push blood through veins, right? So it's responsible for what? For transporting blood back into the heart. Now moving on to capillaries. So we said that capillaries are the smallest blood networks or the smallest blood vessels. And capillaries are connecting arteries and veins. As I say, that they form a bridge between arteries and veins, right? So they are smallest of blood vessels. So their walls are only 1 cell thick, right? As compared to the other blood vessels. So their walls are 1 cell thick and they are very narrow, right? So blood cells must pass through capillaries in a single file. So they must pass through in a linear form where they follow each other, right? And also where gases are passed to or from tissues, right? So this is what? A picture of capillaries, right? They form a bridge between arteries and veins. They are the smallest of blood networks that are found in our bodies. So now we have activity 1 to explore, right? So let's go to the questions together. Number 1 is saying, what is the main function of the circulatory system? Then number 2 says provide labels for the following diagram, right? So now, because you have to label the whole diagram and also you need to give us the main function of the circulatory system, I'm going to give you 5 minutes quickly to copy down and write down your answers. Welcome back, grade 9s. Yes, we had activity 1 and I hope you have enjoyed it, right? So number 1 was saying what is the main function of the circulatory system, and number 2 we needed to provide labels for the following diagram, right? So let's look at the solutions now. So the main function of the circulatory system is to transport nutrients and oxygen to all the cells of the body, and as well as to remove waste products from the body, right? So you mark your work. Then number 2, the labels for the diagram. Number 1 is pulmonary artery, right? Then 2, it's superior vena cava, right? Then 3, it's pulmonary vein. 4, it is the right blood cells. So let's talk about these components also one by one. So the blood plasma part of blood, right? This one is made up of about 90% water, right? This is the most what? This is the where this is where most of the water from the blood comes from. It's about 90% water. And the rest of the 10% is dissolved gases, salts, nutrients, enzymes, hormones, waste products, and plasma proteins. As for red blood cells, the red blood cells are also known as erythrocytes, right? This word erythrocytes, they are known as erythrocytes. Those are our red blood cells. So the red blood cells are the most numerous cells in the blood. They are the ones that are holding high numbers well, in the blood, right? So we can say that also the blood is made up mostly by red blood cells. And the red blood cells are responsible for transporting oxygen throughout the whole body as it circulates with the blood, right? And the red blood cells, they get their color from hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is iron-containing protein that binds with oxygen. Are we together? So the red blood cells, they are shaped like round plates which are indented in the center, right? And here is a picture of our red blood cells, right? So if you look at this, right, look at their shape as well. They are round shaped or like round plates, and also they are indented where on the center. Now moving on to another component of the blood, which is white blood cells. White blood cells are so important because they help us fight diseases, right? So now, the white blood cells, these ones, they are also known as leukocytes, right? They are known as leukocytes. And red blood cells are erythrocytes, whereas white blood cells are leukocytes. So these ones, they do not contain hemoglobin, and also they are much lesser in numbers as compared to red blood cells, to a point where the ratio is they are outnumbered by 1000 is to 1. Are we together? So they are very limited in the blood. So they are produced from cells in the bone marrow, and as well as they fight diseases for us, and also they may live for days, months, or even years, right? So when you look at our blood composition here, this is what? A white blood cell, right? This is a white blood cell. Also, when you look at our picture here, right, it is outnumbered, right? It is 1 in 1,000, right? It is 1 in 1,000 red blood cells. So they are outnumbered as well. They are lesser than red blood cells in our blood. So now platelets, which are also part of the blood, right? Platelets now, they are also important because now they can form a clot, right? So blood can form a clot because of platelets. Now, why a clot? So think of yourself, right? Where if you're chopping your veggies, you're about to cook at home, right? Then you cut yourself accidentally. What happens? After some time, the blood is going to be dry, right? Or the blood is going to clot. And from that clotting, it prevents what? Further loss of blood. So meaning you're going to start healing from there on. When mitosis takes place, the cells are repaired and replaced. Then from there on, you recover your whole skin. Right? So this is what's enabling us to be able to form blood clots and heal from our wounds. Right? So now, the process of blood clotting, we said that there needs to be a break in capillary wall, right? By capillary wall, remember capillaries are our smallest blood networks, right? So from there on, when there's a break, you start bleeding, right? So now after some time, there's going to be some clumping of platelets, right? And those clumping, they're going to form what? They're going to form clots. So the clot forms to prevent further loss of blood, as I've said, right? And this is a structure or an example of how the blood clots and the grouping of platelets, right? So we also have activity 2 for today, right? So activity 2 says copy and complete the following table into your workbook. Compare the arteries, veins, and capillaries according to the headings given in the column, in the left column on the table. So when you look at the table, you have direction of blood flow, you have type of blood transported, thickness of walls, blood pressure in vessels, then you have arteries, veins, and capillaries. Simply compare the three according to what? To the headings on the left hand side. So let's take 5 minutes quickly, draw the table, and answer the question. Welcome back, grade 9s. I hope you enjoyed this activity as well, right? So you simply had to copy and complete the table that is below, and you needed to compare between arteries, veins, and capillaries, right? According to the headings given in the left column of the table. So let's look at our solutions now. Right, for arteries, the direction of blood flow, it is away from the heart, right? And for veins, it is towards the heart, right? So for capillaries, I've put an X to show that it is not applicable. Why am I saying that? Because they form a bridge between what? Between arteries and veins. So also now for type of blood transported, for arteries, it is oxygenated blood, right? But except for the pulmonary arteries, don't forget that part. Then veins, type of blood transported, it is deoxygenated blood, and also except for the pulmonary veins. Then thickness of walls. For arteries, they have thick muscle walls, right? And veins have thin muscle walls, right? Then for capillaries, they have a single layer of cells, right? Their walls are made up of a single layer of cells. Then blood pressure in vessels. For arteries, it's high blood pressure. For veins, it is low blood pressure, right? So let's take another quick 2 minutes to copy down the corrections. Then after that, we'll wrap up our lesson. Welcome back, grade 9s. Now let's wrap up our lesson. But before that, let's talk about the diseases that affect the circulatory system, right? So now, these diseases are called cardiovascular diseases, right? And the heart diseases and stroke are leading causes of death and disability, and as well as cholesterol, right? So cholesterol is a waxy fat-like substance that is found in all the cells in your body, right? So it contains what? Fatty deposits where in all our cells of our bodies. Now, another disease that affects the circulatory system is high blood pressure, right? And it's also known as hypertension. So now the high blood pressure, it forces the heart to work harder than normal, right? It forces the heart to work harder and may weaken or damage the heart muscle and also blood vessels. So it is more likely to develop coronary heart disease when you have high blood pressure, right? And high blood pressure also increases the risk of heart attack or stroke. Another one is arteriosclerosis, right? Atherosclerosis is when you have fatty deposits that are called plaque and they build up in the inner walls of arteries, right? So the blocked artery can die from lack of oxygen, and if more than enough, heart muscle is damaged, it can lead to heart attacks. So these are the fatty deposits that develop inside our arteries, right? So looking at this one, right? This is the normal artery. It allows for the flow of blood so smoothly, right? Then you start to develop mild atherosclerosis, right? Now you have the fatty deposits being or building up inside the walls of the arteries, right? So as you can see now, the pathway is constricted, right? It becomes smaller and smaller. So when now it is severe atherosclerosis, right? It becomes to a point where it is almost blocked or blocked completely, and now the blood cannot flow from one side to another. Also, the heart diseases or circulatory diseases, they include what? Heart disease, which is the narrowing of blood vessels around the heart, which can lead to what? Can lead to heart attacks. And heart attacks, their symptoms include nausea, shortness of breath, and severe crushing chest pain. And as well as the blood clots can form as a result of atherosclerosis and can travel to the brain and cause stroke, right? So when you have stroke, the brain cells die from lack of oxygen. They die from lack of oxygen, and the brain function in that region may be lost as a result. So now, how can we prevent these diseases, right? We can simply prevent these diseases by following simple instructions such as getting regular exercises, eating a balanced diet, right? And to avoid smoking, right? No smoking, eating a balanced diet, and also regular exercises can help us to prevent all the diseases that are affecting the circulatory system. So to summarize what we have learned for today, we're talking about the circulatory system, right? We said that the function of the circulatory system is to simply bring in nutrients and oxygen to cells and remove waste products. And the structure of the circulatory system, it includes what? It includes the blood vessels, such as arteries, veins, and capillaries, and also the blood itself, and as well as the heart, right? Now also, we said that the main processes of the circulatory system is to circulate blood between the heart and the lungs, and as well as to circulate blood between the heart and the rest of the body, right? Then we talked about the diseases that affect the circulatory system, which are called cardiovascular diseases, right? So we said that they are the diseases that are stroke, right? Heart attack, atherosclerosis, high blood pressure, right? And also what? We said it's atherosclerosis, heart disease, heart attack, stroke, and also high blood pressure. And we said that to avoid or to prevent these diseases, we need to be able to exercise regularly. We need to eat a balanced diet. We need to also not smoke, right? So no smoking, eating a balanced diet, and getting what? Regular exercises can help us to prevent all the diseases that are associated with the circulatory system. So in the next lesson, we'll be talking about the digestive system and specifically healthy diet. Are we together? So I hope you enjoyed today's lesson, and from me to you now, thank you and goodbye.